Thanks for watching this video. It focuses on QuickBooks Online and how you're tracking your products and services. That's the list we call it. You might be used to it as the items list in desktop, but in QuickBooks Online, Simple Start, Essentials, and Plus, I have a list of products and services. Now I'm going to be in QuickBooks Online Plus because QuickBooks Online Plus is required if you want to track two-sided items, which I'll be showing, inventory, which is first in, first out, which I'll also be showing. Essentials and Plus do have bundles as well, which is like group items, and I'll show that in this video as well. It's just going to be a high level of what you can do, and then you can take it from there and dive in. Now, your left-hand panel might have this format of dashboard, banking, sales, expenses. So when you go into sales, you would see your products and services list, customers, or all sales, which would be your sales transaction window, or you might still have the left-hand panel that has home, customers, vendors, etc. And you can find the products and services list under the gear icon, products and services, or from the all lists under the list menu. Now, if we go to account and settings, there's a couple settings that are important to consider here. In the sales setting, that's where you'll find it. So you click on sales and account and settings, and then down to products and services. Now, typically, this one is usually default checked, right? To show product and service column on sales forms. There is a way to track a SKU. It's an extra field you can use for other things to filter on reports, and we'll be looking at some reports. Here's if you want to track quantity and price and rate, right? So both Essentials and Plus would have that. And then tracking inventory quantity on hand, which we'll explain first in, first out here, and kind of the valuation method we use for that for the cost of goods sold, which would be debited when you sell it, right? Similar to desktop, except it's not average cost. And Plus, you would need to turn that on. Now, for the light job costing, not that we're really going to show that, but if you go to the expense setting, just so you know, in Plus, you have the ability for two-sided items, which I'll show you when I go into, a non-inventory part or a service part that I have to show the purchase and the revenue side of the item. I can use the same item on a check as I can on a sales receipt or an invoice, right? Show item side on expense and purchase forms. So that gives me an item details tab. If you're used to desktop, you know how when you're writing a check, you have account, or I should say expense tab and then items tab. It's similar. In QBO, you'd have an account tab and you'd have an items tab if you're purchasing some items to pass through or something like that, or your inventory parts, what have you. So that's going to be a Plus only thing. And then, of course, in the advanced setting that impacts products and services and time tracking, you could add a service field to timesheets. If you happen to be tracking a service item on a timesheet and you want to tag that to a customer and pass it through, that's where you'd go and affect that. So just showing you some settings where I believe products and services would be impacted. And then we're on our products and services list now. So let's look at just an item in general and two-sided items. I have this appliance here. It's a non-inventory part. Now, first off, if I just click new, and you can run a quick report on these items too and see what transactions they're on. That's great. That's just by clicking the drop-down arrow. You can run a quick report, basically, is what that is. And I'll show you the reporting regarding products and services in the reports menu in the left-hand panel. If I click new, it gives me 4 different item types, or I should say product and service type. I keep wanting to say item, so I might say item throughout this video. Products and service type, I can do an inventory part, because again, I'm in Plus, non-inventory, service, or a bundle. And we'll look at a bundle and a group item in a bit. I'm going to go ahead to my appliance item that I've already set up, just so you can see what the items look like. You could do a SKU. Some people use this for another field, but if you do have a SKU or a manufacturer part number, something like that, you go ahead and put that in here and actually filter reports. You can do sub products and services, or in your client's QBO, there might be an option for a category. And I'll show you that in a little bit when I go into a different client file. Here's where you put the sales description to show up on forms, the sales price rate if you know it. If not, just leave it as 0. You can do it on the fly. And then the revenue account to link to. And there's a nice checkbox to update price and recurring templates. If you change it here, that's great, and that's kind of new. And then purchasing information. I have the cost going to my job materials sub cost of goods sold account. So I have a two-sided item. I could actually use this to purchase the appliance, use the same item to sell it. As well as I have some service items, and you can filter the list by clicking, on the actual type of item. So I could look at my service items and apply that. You'd see some service items that I have there. My installation item, for example, you can edit that. And that is also a two-sided item. It's 15 bucks an hour cost to the business, and then I charge out to my clients $35, right? You're used to using service type items in desktop. You could apply it here, even though we call it products and services, you have different types, right? Non-inventory and service are great for this kind of stuff for your service-based businesses or pass-through. Items you're purchasing that are not really in inventory and you're going to resell them. That's what I mean. Now, there is no way to track unit of measure, and there's no sales order workflow. There's no build assembly, and no way to track current availability. And the inventory valuation method is first in, first out. And of course, you can track single-sided items as well, whether you're hitting revenue or expense, if you like. Remember, Simple Start Essentials, they can only track single-sided items. So you need plus for two-sided items, or you might call it double-sided items. Now, you notice up at the top, and we added this recently, the ability to track low stock or my items that are out of stock. And this is really just around inventory. I'm going to go ahead and click the out of stock. And then we'll put, some items through some forms and look at some reports. These are my inventory parts that are out of stock. And the reason why they're out of stock is I actually have the ability to track a reorder point. So let's go to cabinets for a second, because that is an inventory part. And inventory parts, just like in desktop, is a three-sided item. Remember, the valuation method is first in, first out. But COGS still gets debited when you sell it, and I'm still hitting three accounts: cost of goods sold, revenue, and the inventory asset account. And when you're converting from desktop, the inventory parts will come over. All the items are going to come over. Even if they're inactive, they'll still come over as active, regardless of a balance in the desktop. And I can also attach an image to my parts if I want to. Again, you might use SKU. There's the inventory asset account. And I can set a reorder point, so when it gets close to that or surpasses it, then you'll see low stock versus out of stock. Now, regarding inventory, I can make a quantity adjustment or a starting value adjustment. The starting value adjustment is just if whoever set up these items or products and services, they might have put in the incorrect cost. So I can make a value adjustment there, which is its own transaction, or I can make a quantity adjustment. And you can do that from other places, from the item itself or from the drop-down arrow in the action column. I can make a quantity adjustment or starting value adjustment. The starting value adjustment is not to be like some ongoing periodic thing. It's just usually a one-time thing when you realize that the original cost of the item when it was put in the system is incorrect. And the nice thing about this is I can, as I see all of these are out of stock, or these four specifically, so I can go to batch actions after I check them all off, and I can reorder them, which brings up a purchase order. So purchasing these items for Custom Kitchens of Bayshore, and I can choose the quantity. Now, what's also helpful is you mouse over, whether you're on a cost form or a sales transaction, like an invoice, sales receipt, you're on a bill or check or credit card expense or whatever. When you mouse over, or hover, I should say, over the actual quantity field, it'll show the quantity on hand and the reorder point. So I can use that, or I could have a report up in another tab or on another monitor, just to know how much I need to actually purchase from the vendor. And remember, the purchase order is non-posting, but I can still save and send it to the vendor. In my case, I'm just going to save and close it. So nothing's in inventory yet. The stock would still show, out of stock. However, when I go to expenses and vendors, or you might have in your left-hand panel as you just go to vendors, and I can drill down on purchase orders and find the particular purchase order I have for that one open purchase order for Custom Kitchens at Bayshore. I can go there. I can also create, a bill or credit card expense from it. Or if I happen to go to the plus sign, go into an expense, obviously there was the option under the action column for that particular vendor to create a bill from the PO. And this is what I was talking about, the item details tab and the account details. Because of that setting I turned on, now I have the ability to use items on a cost form. And that you need plus for that, this two item functionality, which is going to be really important. So when I go down to Custom Kitchens of Bayshore, you'll see that the drawer on the right will open. And there's my purchase order, 1001 for over 12 grand, right? So I click add. And now this will be a posting transaction. This is going to increase the inventory for these inventory parts, or if I had a non-inventory part like the appliance, I could put on here as well. And though I'm not tracking really quantity in hand for the non-inventory part, I could still, purchase it this way as well. But I think for this purpose, we'll just use the inventory parts. And then I'm going to click Save and Close. And when I go back to my products and service list, whether I do it from the sales and then products and services, you see I have nothing out of stock, or from the gear icon list products and services. Either way, you'll be able to track that from there. And now let's go sell, one of those items. I'll click the plus sign and we'll go to a sales receipt. It could be an invoice, what have you. And you got Christy coming in, and she's using like her Visa, right? And if I have QB payments turned on, I could enter those credit card details, and I'll sell her, one of the appliance, as well as we have some of the cabinets there that she's going to purchase. And now this is when the inventory will be, I should say, the cost of goods sold will be debited for the inventory part. Now here's the SKU number, right? So this would show up on forms as a column as well as on reports, and you could filter. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save here, so that we can then click the More tab and run a transaction journal, which is a Control Y report. Just so we can align here, see, cost of goods sold debited $350 because regarding the inventory sales. And then I have undeposited funds is debited, and then I have the revenue accounts credited, and then of course I credited the sales tax on one of those. So you're tracking sales tax at the item level as well. And you can sign a default sales tax item for customers too. Look for an updated video on tracking sales tax in QBO on our website. So 3 things we'll look at. Reporting, and then we'll look at tracking a group item or a bundle real quick, and then the category feature. So you'll find a lot of product and service based reports. I can review sales for one, and there's sales by product and service summary, sales by product and service detail. Those are helpful, and you can customize these just by clicking the little, customize here, or you can click on the little baby gear icon and choose to show more columns. So I can choose to add SKU or some other columns that would be critical for the report that I need. And you just step off and it adds it. And it just shows by item the transactions. You can do a quick report from the product and service list as we saw. And for inventory related reports, you have your manage products and inventory. And there's a valuation detail report, a summary report, and then again some sales related and purchases by product and service detail reporting. I'll go ahead and run the inventory valuation detail just so you can get an idea. And you see in the column, you'll have FIFO cost. Now, in another client file I have, because it hasn't been converted from desktop, we just started this one without converting from desktop, I have the ability to track categories, which is kind of like sub-items. But you can use it for other things too. People use this to track like locations and stuff or assign things to different things. But it's just creating a category, which is pretty easy. You just name it and you can do subcategories. And this is like a pet grooming, cleaning, and they also do boarding. And then I can filter the list, really, and that's the most helpful thing. I mean, I'm using this on really reports and this list specifically, where I can look at, all of the, dog attire type items that I have, filter for that. And so that's really what categories is for. And on reports, I can filter by a category or add the category column. And on transactions, when I'm doing, like, let's see, we got quantity on here. Okay, let's sell a dog leash. All right, so we'll just do a quick sales receipt. And you'll notice I won't bother with the customer at this point, but just so you can see the actual category comes up and then colon and the actual product and service. So it's kind of like parent to child relationship, main item to sub item, if you will, but we call it categories. Helpful to filter by reporting. So I'm going to clear the filter. And lastly, for this overview regarding products and services in QuickBooks Online, mostly in Plus, we're going to look at the bundle. Right? So I do have a bundle here, and I'll filter by bundle. Yeah, groom and board. Right? They have to stay at least 3 days, and just edit the item so you can see what it looks like. So again, this is not an accounting move. The bundle, like the group item in desktop, it inherits the sales price and the cost that these component items have, and it's not a build assembly. And there's my picture of the golden retriever sleeping, right? So they get their own beds here, and then I have the 3 products and services. And what's nice is I can choose to either display the bundle components on the sales transaction, the customer-facing transaction, or not, which I find most helpful. So very similar to a group item in desktop. Have a great day.